"I'll give you 10,000 reals to walk away," the billionaire offered, his voice laced with condescension. But the girl just knelt down, picked up a single rusted bolt, and smiled. The afternoon sun, sharp and relentless, beat down on the marble streets of Jeddah's exclusive Al-Shadeh district. Here, wealth was not subtle. It was sculpted into every skyscraper and manicured palm tree. The heart of this opulence was the majestic Grand Galleria, a shopping sanctuary where a single wristwatch cost more than a small home. In the Galleria's VIP parking bay sat Sheikh Tariq Al-Faisal, the evening central figure. The Arabian billionaire's presence commanded silence, his custom white thobe and gold-embroidered bisht signaling power that transcended commerce. As the CEO of Al-Faisal Global Tech, his reputation was built on his absolute authority and his legendary, calculated arrogance. He was waiting for his personal security team to retrieve his latest acquisition, a bespoke, multi-million-dollar hypercar, the Aries X, shipped directly from Europe. Cameras flashed, focusing on Tariq, who checked his limited edition Patek Philippe with an air of practiced impatience. Outside the opulent perimeter, the air was thick with heat and the dust of the old city, a place known as Al-Hada, miles away from the Galleria's pristine facade. That's where she came from. A small figure, Zahra Abbas, slipped past the board security detail near a service entrance. A 16-year-old girl whose hands, usually busy fixing electronics for her neighbors, were stained with oil and dust. Her clothing was simple, practical, and worn. Clutched in her hand was a small, homemade diagnostics tablet, a device she'd built from salvaged military-grade components. She hadn't come to shop. She had been summoned by a faint, desperate distress signal she'd accidentally intercepted on her device, a signal emanating from the heart of the Galleria's network, a crisis Tariq Al-Faisal wasn't even aware of yet. The girl's name was Zahra, and she was about to teach a sheik that the most valuable commodity in the world wasn't oil or gold, but the disruptive truth of a single, forgotten algorithm. The Aries X was Tariq Al-Faisal's new obsession. It was a $7 million piece of vehicular art, a hypercar so advanced its operating system was more complex than a small country's air traffic control. Its keyless ignition, its autonomous driver controls, and its bespoke titanium frame were a testament to limitless wealth. Tariq leaned against the vehicle, waiting for his driver to bring it around. He was running late for a high-profile board meeting in Riyadh, and the impatience was beginning to show in the tightening of his jaw. "Where is the driver?" He snapped into his secure headset. "He is attempting to override the internal security lock, Sheikh." A voice crackled back, apologetic and stressed. "The car's main computer, the Centaurus system, has locked all controls. It will not acknowledge his biometric signature or the physical key." Tariq scowled. A public, mechanical failure was an insult to his technological empire. "Send the technical team immediately," he commanded. "I want this resolved in 5 minutes. This vehicle is a showcase of technology, not a source of embarrassment." From her vantage point, a cramped service bay disguised as a flower delivery dock, Zahra watched the commotion. She was pressed against a wall of empty boxes, her heart thumping against her ribs. She didn't care about the rich man's car. She cared about the signal. Her diagnostics tablet, a cheap-looking device with wires taped crudely around the edges, was running a deep packet inspection. The distress signal wasn't from the car itself. It was coming from the Galleria's main server room, routing through the car's advanced wireless hub. The Galleria's network was running on a private, customized operating system called ShadowNet. Zahra recognized the coding. It was based on an ancient, highly inefficient infrastructure protocol that her late father, a brilliant but disgraced network engineer, used to call the widow's web. It was a system built for maximum control and minimum oversight, and it was failing. Zahra's tablet flashed red, displaying the projected failure path. A complete system crash within the hour, which would lock down the Galleria's automated security systems, lighting, and climate control, causing chaos and a massive data breach. More critically, it would seize control of all connected vehicular systems within the network's radius, including the Aries X. She looked at Tariq, the man who represented the entire ecosystem of greed and inefficiency her father had railed against. He stood frustrated by his $7 million toy, oblivious to the fact that his entire empire was minutes away from collapse. The security team arrived, 2 men in tailored suits, attempting to physically pry open the car's sealed door. They were focused on the symptom, not the cause. Zahra knew she had to get inside the perimeter. The ShadowNet core was in the car's diagnostic port, and she needed physical access to inject her patch. Taking a deep breath, she decided on the most direct, most insane path, straight through the crowd. She walked out of the service bay and straight toward the Ares X. The crowd, mostly tourists and employees, parted instantly for the unkempt, small girl. Tariq's security detail intercepted her immediately. "Stop right there," one guard barked, placing a hand on her shoulder. Zahra looked past the guard, directly at Tariq Al-Faisal, who was now staring at her with confused disdain. "Your car is not broken," Zahra announced, her voice slightly breathless, but clear. "Your network is. You have 45 minutes until the ShadowNet fails completely, and you won't just lose control of the door, Sheikh. You will lose control of your entire data center." Tariq laughed, a short, sharp, incredulous sound that drew the attention of every luxury shopper nearby. "Who is this child? A street performer?" Tariq asked his guard, waving a dismissive hand. "Give her 50 rials and remove her." "I don't want money," Zahra insisted, stepping closer. She held up her crudely assembled tablet, displaying the complex, flashing diagnostic map of the ShadowNet's imminent failure. "Your car's Centaurus system is routing the Galleria's internal failure signal. Look." She tapped the screen, pointing to a single, rusted bolt lying near the hypercar's rear wheel, a piece of debris that had been pulled up from the asphalt. "This is a sign of deep structural neglect in the service tunnel below. The ShadowNet hub is situated directly beneath us, and its cooling system has failed because of moisture damage. This car's Wi-Fi is the only active link." Tariq leaned in, his face hardening with cold fury, not because of the technical babble, but because she had dared to expose an infrastructure flaw in his domain. "This is ridiculous," Tariq scoffed. He pulled a thick wad of rials from his thobe. "Here, 10,000 rials. Take it and go study. The greatest gift you can receive is silence and the humility to know your place." Zahra looked at the money, then at the desperate red flashing on her tablet screen. She saw not cash, but the clock counting down to total system collapse. She pushed the money away and knelt down, picking up the rusted bolt. He dismissed his security team with a terse wave, sending them to investigate the service tunnel Zahra had mentioned. The crowd, sensing the conclusion of the drama, slowly dispersed, leaving only Tariq and Zahra in the gleaming, sterile bay. Tariq removed his headset, his eyes fixed on Zahra's homemade tablet. He reached into his bisht and pulled out a sleek, platinum business card, the kind that was never handed out. It was a token of absolute access. "You have a gift, Zahra," Tariq said, his voice now smooth, regaining its aristocratic cadence. "A raw, untamed intelligence. But intelligence without structure is just noise. You need the machine to run the world, not just fix it." He didn't offer her money this time. He offered her a future he thought she couldn't refuse. The condescending offer. "I am offering you more than rials," Tariq stated, sliding the platinum card onto the hood of the Ares X. "I will personally fund your private education, the finest tutors in the kingdom. I will ensure you have a stipend, a home, and a visa to study at MIT or Stanford when you turn 18. Everything the world of privilege can offer." He then pulled a single, elegant pen from his pocket, a Montblanc, worth more than Zahra's entire family earned in a year. "In return," Tariq continued, his eyes cold and unwavering, "you will sign one document, a non-disclosure agreement. You will never speak of the ShadowNet flaw, the data trap, or the neglect in the service tunnels. You will dismantle that scrap device immediately. You will disappear into the finest schools and never, ever associate your success with the name Al-Faisal Global Tech in this context. You will be my secret project." He was offering a golden cage, a guaranteed future in exchange for total, absolute silence and the erasure of her own history. He was attempting to buy her talent and, crucially, her testimony. Zahra looked from the pen to the platinum card, then back to Tariq. She knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't paying for her education. He was paying for the preservation of his image. "My father worked for a company just like yours, Sheikh," Zahra said quietly, her eyes reflecting the polished chrome of the hypercar. He was brilliant. He warned them about the widow's web protocol, the exact one that caused this failure. They offered him money to sign a similar paper. He refused. They ruined him. She reached out and picked up the rusted bolt she had found earlier. "My father taught me that a system built on secrecy and contempt for the truth will always fail," she continued. "You didn't offer me 10,000 rials for humility, Sheikh. You offered it because you were desperate for silence." She pushed the Mont Blanc pen and the platinum card off the hood. The Mont Blanc clattered on the marble. "I refuse your offer," Zahra stated, her voice shaking slightly, but holding firm. "I didn't come here for charity. I came here because my community, Al-Hada, relies on the same antiquated infrastructure that runs this galleria. If the shadow net is failing here, it's already failing on a massive scale in the poorer districts. You are prioritizing the climate control of handbags over the emergency services of entire neighborhoods." Tariq's face flushed with fury. "You have just thrown away your only chance for a life outside the dirt, child. You will find that without my protection, your genius is nothing but a public nuisance." "Then let's make it public," Zahra challenged. She pulled a small, specialized USB drive, a sleek, custom-built device protected by a metallic casing she called the Al-Noor key, the light key, from the inner pocket of her bag. This was not the scrap tablet. This was the master tool, containing a full, stable, decentralized network operating system, a clean slate solution to the shadownet. "You are afraid of the truth getting out, Sheikh," Zahra said, looking directly into the nearest security camera. "I am giving you a way to prove your claims of technological leadership are real." She presented the key, holding it between her thumb and forefinger. "The challenge. I propose a wager, Sheikh Tariq Al-Faisal," Zahra announced. "A 72-hour challenge, broadcast live across the kingdom and the financial world. I will use the Al-Noor system to stabilize the failing infrastructure of the Al-Hada district, to provide reliable power, network, and water control, all decentralized and open source. Your Al-Faisal Global Tech will attempt to restore the grid using your proprietary shadownet system." She took a deep breath, the desert heat suddenly feeling cold on her skin. "If my Al-Noor system stabilizes Al-Hada permanently within 72 hours, and yours fails to provide an ethical, stable solution across the region, then you will resign as CEO of Al-Faisal Global Tech. You will transfer a controlling interest of your infrastructure division into a public trust dedicated to upgrading underserved communities. My formula takes over the grid." She held up the Al-Noor key, its metallic casing shining under the Galleria lights. "If I fail, I accept full responsibility for corporate espionage, turn myself over to the authorities, and disappear forever. Your choice, Sheikh. Silence or salvation." Sheikh Tariq Al-Faisal's face was a mask of cold fury and calculation. He had been blindsided, challenged, and publicly embarrassed. But he was not defeated. He saw Zahra's challenge, the 72-hour wager, not as a test of technology, but as a test of will. He had to accept, or he would look like a coward terrified of a teenage girl. "A 72-hour wager," Tariq repeated, his voice echoing in the marble hall, now amplified by the lingering media presence. He smiled, a thin, predatory expression. "You risk prison, and I risk a mere division of my company. The terms are hardly equitable, Zahra, but I admire your audacity." He paused, leaning into the camera, playing the generous, confident statesman. "I accept your wager. Let the world witness the folly of improving anarchy against engineered excellence." But as Zahra prepared to declare her victory, Tariq raised a hand, deploying his crucial countercondition, the technical trap he knew would guarantee her failure. The arrogant countercondition. However, the terms of engagement must be technically sound. Tariq continued, his eyes gleaming. Your Al-Noor system requires a physical input line, does it not? To tie into the Al-Hadda district's power distribution. A stable system must be auditable. He pulled out a secure electronic contract on his thin, state-of-the-art tablet. Your system will be restricted to operating exclusively on the decommissioned power trunk B7 that runs under the Al-Hadda district. This trunk is an abandoned, antiquated copper line, deliberately disconnected from the modern fiber grid and marked for demolition. It is also limited to a 100 kilowatt power ceiling, a fraction of what the district actually needs. You must make your decentralized miracle work using only that single, obsolete copper trunk and its meager ceiling. He finished with a sneer. And you will be provided only one laptop, not your scrap toy, but a certified, monitored machine from my company, to prevent unauthorized external communication. The condition was crushing. Tariq wasn't just restricting her. He was forcing her to use a severely constrained, outdated, and unstable physical infrastructure that his own engineers wouldn't touch. The Al-Hadda district needed at least $500 kilowatts to run basic services. $100 kilowatts would guarantee failure and instability, proving her system was inadequate. Zahra's face didn't betray the shock she felt. The decommissioned trunk B7 was her only logical point of entry, but the $100 kW ceiling was a death sentence for the project. Tariq wasn't trying to win. He was trying to guarantee she crashed and burned spectacularly. If I cannot meet the power needs, the system is deemed failed? Zahra asked, her voice low. If the system cannot stabilize and sustain the minimum required power for the district's emergency services for 72 consecutive hours, Tariq corrected, his smile widening, you lose everything. Sign the contract, Zahra. She looked at the contract, then back at the rusted bolt in her hand. Her father had always told her to study the weaknesses of a structure, not the opponent. She knew the trunk B7 had a specific, undocumented flaw that could be exploited. Zahra took the stylus Tariq offered. She didn't sign the digital line. Instead, she pointed to a legal clause about the monitoring of the operational hardware. I agree to the trunk B7 and the $100 kW ceiling, Zahra stated, and the use of your certified laptop. But in the interest of transparent competition, Sheikh, I require a physical security clause. I must be allowed to deploy my own physical safeguards around my chosen infrastructure hub, and those safeguards cannot be remotely disabled by your network security, or the wager is void. Tariq hesitated. He knew he was planning digital sabotage, but he couldn't object to a security clause. It made him look fair. Granted. Tariq agreed, snapping his tablet shut. Let the games begin, Miss Abbas. Within 2 hours, the massive corporate machine of Al-Faisal Global Tech descended upon Al-Hadda. It wasn't to help. It was to observe and ensure failure. Zahra was escorted to the designated site, a desolate, sand-choked service yard where trunk B7 surfaced before going underground. The yard was instantly surrounded by black SUVs and armed Al-Faisal security. She was handed the single, sleek silver laptop. It was running a clean OS, but Zahra knew every line of code was being monitored, waiting for her to make a digital mistake. Zahra, however, wasn't looking at the screen. She was looking at the trunk B7 access point, a massive, half-buried, rusting metal junction box. She was alone, facing a mountain of technical and financial power. But she wasn't truly alone. She reached into her worn bag and pulled out a small, encrypted burner phone, a piece of tech Tariq's guards hadn't thought to search for. The phone buzzed. It was an anonymous text message. B7 flaw, undocumented thermal override at 110 kilowatts. Use the physical ground loop. Zahra smiled. It was the same handwriting from her father's old notes. It wasn't her father. He had passed away. But it was his code name. Someone inside Al-Faisal Global Tech, someone who knew the ancient infrastructure, was her secret ally. The thermal override was the key. The trunk B7 had an analog, outdated safety feature. If the copper lines briefly spiked above $100 $100 kW, up to $110 kW. Due to a sudden thermal expansion, the old system would interpret it as a non-critical temperature variance, not power breach, and temporarily reroute the excess load safely into a hidden, deep earth ground loop before resetting. It was a loophole, a tiny 5-minute window to run power she wasn't allowed to have. "They want me to crash and burn," Zahra muttered, looking at the rusting metal. "I'll make them think I'm burning, then reroute the heat." She turned to the nearest security camera, which was broadcasting her every move back to Tariq Al-Faisal's war room. "I need my physical safeguards," Zahra announced loudly, ensuring the mic picked up her words. She didn't ask for high-tech gear. She asked for 2 large, ceramic water basins, 50 meters of high-density fiberglass insulation tape, a large supply of basic industrial salt. The guards looked confused, but the contract required compliance. They brought the bizarre items. Zahra proceeded to meticulously wrap the trunk B 7 access point with fiberglass tape. She then filled the ceramic basins with water and dissolved the industrial salt into them, creating an ultraconductive brine solution. "What is she doing?" Tariq Al-Faisal demanded from his war room, watching the strange ritual. "It appears to be a form of primitive, physical grounding, Sheikh," his chief engineer reported, suppressing a laugh. "She is creating a saltwater electrolytic shunt. It's useless against a modern system, but perhaps she thinks it will ward off bad spirits." Tariq leaned back, satisfied. Superstitious nonsense. He was watching a child waste precious time on physical distraction, unaware that she was building the only defense against his digital attack. Zahra was ready. She had built her physical safeguard, a high-resistance, temperature-controlling shunt that would exploit the system's thermal blind spot. Now, she just needed to launch the Al-Noor system and wait for Tariq's inevitable digital attack. Tariq Al-Faisal sat in his mirrored, subterranean war room, watching Zahra on the large screen. The image quality was pristine, broadcast live from the camera monitoring the certified laptop he'd provided her. He saw her tap the Al-Noor key into the laptop's USB port, launching her decentralized operating system. "Launch sequence confirmed, Sheikh," reported his chief engineer, a man named Omar, whose expression was a mixture of disdain and professional curiosity. "The Al-Noor OS is running. It's stable, clean, and entirely self-contained. It's bypassing our firewalls and operating purely on the isolated trunk B7 line, as per the contract." "Good," Tariq said, leaning back. "Now, give them the reason to distrust it. Execute the phantom flicker." Tariq's strategy was simple and devastatingly effective. He wasn't going to crash Zahra's system, which would look like blatant sabotage. Instead, he would make the services running on her grid appear unstable and unreliable to the public, eroding confidence in her solution before the 72 hours were up. The covert digital attack. Omar initiated the attack through the monitoring software embedded in Zahra's certified laptop. The attack code was designed to do 2 things. Time sync distortion. The code subtly corrupted the laptop's internal clock and, by extension, the time synchronization protocol for the Al-Noor network nodes. Phantom load generation. The corruption caused the decentralized nodes to momentarily disagree on the time, leading to tiny, microsecond lags in power delivery. This wouldn't cause a blackout, but it would cause a phantom flicker, a subliminal disruption. In Al-Hada, the district connected to trunk B7, the lights didn't go out, but every few minutes they flickered, a barely noticeable, unsettling skip. On the newly restored internet connections, data packets were dropped, causing slight delays in streaming and communication. "Look at the news feed, Sheikh," Omar smirked, pointing to a monitor displaying a local news channel. "The reports are coming in. Al-Hada residents complain of flickering lights and unreliable internet on new emergency grid. They don't know why, they just know the service is bad." Tariq nodded, satisfied. Decentralized systems thrive on trust. Without trust, they are chaos. She must prove her system is stable, but how can she, when her own laptop is feeding it faulty time data? In the dusty service yard, Zahra watched the internal diagnostics of the Al-Noor system. Everything was green. power flow was capped perfectly at $100 kW. The system was routing power efficiently, and the malicious ShadowNet code was still quarantined. Yet her phone was buzzing with frantic messages from her neighbors in Al-Hada. The streetlights are skipping. The TV keeps glitching. The power is nervous. Zahra looked at the certified silver laptop. Its diagnostic screen showed perfect time synchronization. They're not hacking the network. They're hacking the time. Zahra realized, a cold dread washing over her. She looked at the physical defense she had built, the fiberglass-wrapped trunk, and the ceramic basins of saltwater brine. She had been worried about a power surge, thermal override, but Tariq had gone for a timing attack, phantom flicker. She was prepared for fire, but he brought smoke. She furiously analyzed the data stream coming from the certified laptop. The ShadowNet's monitoring software was using a technique called clock skewing, injecting tiny, random time variances that confused the decentralized peer-to-peer network. "I need an unhackable clock," Zahra muttered. "A physical, immutable source of time." She looked up at the barren yard. She had no specialized hardware, no atomic clock, and no way to connect a clean external timing signal without violating the one-monitored laptop clause. Then she saw it. A small, basic analog quartz watch strapped to the wrist of the nearest security guard. An ordinary, cheap accessory. The counter move, analog time. Zahra walked over to the guard, a large, intimidating man focused on guarding the perimeter. "Excuse me," Zahra said politely. "I need your watch. For 5 minutes." The guard looked bewildered. "My watch? Why?" "It's a critical component for stabilizing the $40 billion wager," Zahra said, maintaining a serious, professional demeanor. The guard hesitated, then looked at the silent cameras broadcasting the scene. He knew the terms of the wager meant he had to comply with any physical safeguard requested, provided it wasn't a communication device. He unstrapped the cheap analog watch. Zahra rushed back to her setup. Using the specialized multi-pin connector she had used on the Ares X, she carefully disassembled the quartz watch. She isolated the crystal oscillator, the tiny component that generates the precise electronic pulses to keep time. With surgical precision, she connected the oscillator directly to a redundant data pin on the Al-Noor key, which was still plugged into the monitored laptop. The laptop's internal clock was still skewed by the phantom flicker, but Zahra's Al-Noor system now ignored the laptop's digital clock completely. It was getting its timing pulses, its absolute, uncorruptible tempo, from the simple, unhackable, analog quartz crystal. On her screen, the time synchronization indicator immediately locked into absolute agreement. The phantom flicker attack was instantly negated. In the subterranean war room, Tariq Al-Faisal saw the flicker reports abruptly cease. "What happened?" Tariq demanded, slamming his hand on the desk. "The phantom flicker is still active." Omar, staring at the telemetry, was confused. "Sheikh, her system is suddenly rock solid. Her network time is running outside the certified laptop's OS. She found our attack vector and bypassed the internal clock." "How? With what hardware?" Tariq roared. Omar zoomed the camera feed on Zahra's setup. The close-up showed the tangle of wires leading to the small, cheap quartz watch sitting next to the hypercar key. "She's using a simple quartz crystal as an external time anchor," Omar explained, his voice laced with reluctant respect. "It's an unhackable, analog solution to a digital problem. She neutralized our most subtle attack using a $5 watch." Tariq leaned back, his jaw tight. "She has genius, I grant her that. But genius without resources is just a parlor trick. Now, let's increase the pressure. Time for the physical game. T-minus 50 hours. Launch Operation Dark Load." Tariq commanded. "I want the Al-Hada water utility, the district's main desalination plant, to be remotely diverted to her Trunk B7 line. Hit her with a sudden, massive, unannounced power drain. If she is truly restricted to $100 kilowatts, the surge will either crash her system or trip the main breaker, ending the wager immediately." The game had just turned from sabotage to open warfare. Zahra is about to be hit with an unannounced, Overwhelming power drain from a massive desalination plant. A $500 kW demand on her $100 kW line. Her system will crash instantly. How does Zahra use her previously built physical safeguard, the saltwater ceramic basins and fiberglass tape, to absorb the initial shock and exploit the Trunk B7's thermal loophole? Tell me your prediction for her elegant, physical countermove in the comments. In the subterranean war room, Sheikh Tariq Al-Faisal was fully confident. The dark load operation was an assured knockout. His engineers had diverted the Al-Hada desalination plant, forcing a massive, instantaneous demand of $500 kW, 5 times the maximum allowable capacity, onto Zahra's Trunk B7 line. The system had to fail. Incoming surge initiated, Sheikh, Omar confirmed, watching the telemetry spike violently. She has less than 5 seconds before her primary circuit board vaporizes. The $100 kW ceiling is a physical wall. In the dusty service yard, Zahra saw the brutal truth on her certified laptop screen. The power demand indicator shot into the deep red, followed by the terrifying message, breach imminent. Shut down in 3 seconds. She didn't panic. She had anticipated brute force. Tariq believed the $100 kW limit was absolute, but he had forgotten the integrity of the old system. Now, Al-Noor, Zahra commanded, her fingers flying across the laptop. She activated a specific routine in her Al-Noor OS called Thermal Blind Jump. This routine instantly overloaded the Trunk B7 line, forcing the power briefly past the $100 kW limit. 100 kilowatts, 110 kilowatts, 115 kilowatts. As the power passed $110 kW, the physical infrastructure of the decades-old copper Trunk B7 did exactly what Zahra had predicted. It registered the sudden excess current not as a deliberate overload, but as a non-critical temperature variance, triggering the undocumented thermal override. The Trunk B7 automatically rerouted the extreme excess power into its deep earth ground loop. Zahra's custom-built physical safeguard immediately came into play. The highly conductive saltwater brine she had prepared in the ceramic basins acted as a temporary, super-efficient electrolytic shunt. This shunt instantly absorbed the raw heat and voltage flowing into the ground loop, preventing the copper line from melting and protecting her Al-Noor key. The fiberglass tape she had wrapped around the access point provided crucial, momentary thermal insulation, keeping the temperature-sensing protocol fooled just long enough. For a terrifying, 3-second moment, the Trunk B7 handled the entire $500 kW demand. Then, just as the system began to stabilize, the thermal override instantly snapped the power back down to the contracted $100 kW maximum. Zahra wasn't broadcasting this data to the public yet. She was broadcasting it directly into Tariq Al-Faisal's secure internal network. She had given him a private, undeniable demonstration of the full extent of the damage she could inflict, the absolute public humiliation she held in her hands. Tariq leaned against the console, his composure finally breaking. "She knows everything," he whispered. "The girl's father, he left her the map of the flaws. She knows where all the bodies are buried. The moment we attempt any further physical sabotage on her family, Sheikh," Omar warned, "she will release all these logs to the media, along with the full security report on the attempted data theft from the Galleria. You would be facing immediate criminal investigations, not just a lost wager." Zahra had achieved checkmate by threatening to expose his past crimes, the true reason Al-Hada was failing. She forced Tariq to pull back the physical threats against her family and community. T-minus 12 hours. Tariq was left with only one move. He had to win the wager cleanly. His final act of sabotage could not be physical or digital. It had to be structural and, most importantly, untrackable back to him. Tariq's eyes landed on a regional map displaying the weather patterns. A massive, unseasonal sandstorm was brewing, scheduled to hit the region in the next 10 hours. "Omar," Tariq commanded, regaining his cold resolve, "initiate the emergency maintenance shutdown sequence on the regional backup grid, the one that services Al-Hada. We don't shut down our system, we remove its safety net. When the sandstorm hits, It will overload all private solar and generator backups simultaneously. Her decentralized system will be forced to shoulder the entire, massive emergency load of the district during a natural disaster. The pressure will fracture her peer-to-peer network. And Sheikh, Tariq added, his voice a chilling threat. Ensure that the shutdown maintenance documents are dated 3 days ago. Make sure it looks like a routine, scheduled failure. The air in the Al-Hatta district turned thick and ominous. The sky, which had been a harsh blue, was quickly dissolving into a swirling, ochre haze, the unmistakable sign of a severe, unseasonal sandstorm. Zahra, back in the dusty service yard, saw the weather reports scrolling across her monitored laptop, which Tariq had no problem with her seeing. It would simply reinforce her sense of impending doom. T-minus 10 hours, sandstorm hits. Tariq's final, structural trap was perfectly timed. The sandstorm would blind the solar panels, choke the private generators, and push the entire Al-Hatta district's energy load, emergency services, hospital lights, communications, onto Zahra's peer-to-peer network. With the regional backup grid secretly shut down, the pressure would be unbearable, leading to a system fracture and failure. Zahra's internal ally, the father's code name source, had to send a warning, but how? Every digital signal was monitored. Suddenly, clean, black SUV pulled into the service yard. It was a vehicle Zahra recognized from the morning's commotion, a standard model used by the Galleria's mid-level management. A man in a neatly pressed white thobe, looking highly stressed, stepped out. He was carrying a small box of expensive gourmet dates, ostensibly a gift for the security team. He was one of Tariq's former network engineers, the source of the anonymous message, tasked with ensuring the routine maintenance, shutdown of the backup grid. He approached the lead security guard, distracting him with the dates and polite conversation. As he turned to leave, he intentionally brushed past Zahra, never making eye contact. The coded warning. As he passed, Zahra noticed something subtle but specific about his freshly pressed, custom-tailored white thobe. Tariq's thobe was always embroidered with gold thread on the collar. This engineer's thobe had a different feature, a sequence of 3 tiny, faint smudges of black motor oil on the cuff near his left hand. The placement was deliberate. 1 smudge near the wrist, representing the backup grid shutdown. 2 smudges clustered tightly near the elbow, representing extreme weather event. A final, single, perfect vertical smudge near the shoulder, representing the single-point failure. It was a coded warning based on an old schematic legend her father had taught her. Single-point failure under environmental stress equals system burnout. The net must float. Zahra instantly understood. The sandstorm would stress her network, and the backup grid was gone. She couldn't fight the $500 kW demand. She had to make the system float above it. "Thank you," Zahra mouthed silently to the engineers retreating back. She rushed back to her laptop. Her defense against the dark load, Chapter 6, was successful, but it was defensive. Now she needed an active, preemptive solution. The problem was that while the Al-Noor system was decentralized, it still relied on a core premise, that the individual nodes, private generators, batteries, were connected in a rigid, peer-to-peer relationship. The massive, immediate power demand from the sandstorm would overwhelm the communication layer, causing the nodes to lose sync and fracture, the single-point failure. Zahra needed to replace the peer-to-peer communication with something instantaneous, redundant, and physical. She looked at the physical infrastructure surrounding the Trump B7 line. She saw the heavy, industrial-grade lightning rod atop the small, dilapidated utility shed, a relic Tariq's team had ignored. Zahra initiated a new, complex routine in her Al-Noor OS, Project PHI-LS, fluctuating adaptive isolated load shunt. She ran a heavy, custom-shielded copper cable from the Al-Noor key, bypassing the monitored laptop's ports, directly to the base of the lightning rod. "I need an instantaneous, redundant communication channel that cannot be digitally monitored," Zahra shouted over the rising winds. The countermeasure, atmospheric communication. Zahra repurposed the industrial lightning rod. It was designed to pull massive atmospheric charge to the ground. She configured her Al-Noor system to use the lightning rod not as a simple ground, but as a massive, unstable antenna operating in a highly erratic, low-frequency electromagnetic band. As the sandstorm arrived, it wasn't just dust. It was vast quantities of static electricity, charging the air. Zahra's Al-Noor system began broadcasting its crucial synchronization pulses through this static-charged atmosphere. Every decentralized node in Al-Hada, which contained a tiny, sensitive copper wire loop, a feature of her Al-Noor key design, was now synchronized by the ambient noise of the sandstorm itself. The network was no longer connecting through the ground or fiber. It was floating on the static charge of the sandstorm. The more chaos the sandstorm caused, the stronger her communication signal became. The entire district of Al-Hada was plunged into the reddish-brown darkness of the storm, but the internal lights, powered by Al-Noor, flickered for a moment, then stabilized into a perfect, unwavering golden glow. In the war room, Tariq watched in disbelief as the load on the Al-Hada district surged, exactly as predicted, but Zahra's $100 kW draw remained perfectly flat. "The power draw has stabilized, Sheikh," Omar reported, his voice numb. "Her system has adapted. She's utilizing an unknown, ultra-low frequency sync pulse. It's coming from the static interference of the sandstorm itself." "Impossible," Tariq roared, striking the marble desk. "It's true," Omar confirmed. "The system is communicating atmospherically. It's decentralized, redundant, and completely invisible to our digital monitoring tools. The crisis we created has become her power source." T-minus 1 hour. The 72-hour wager was almost over. Zahra had weathered every digital, physical, and structural attack. Tariq Al-Faisal, the man who believed he controlled the very infrastructure of the kingdom, had been defeated by a street engineer and her ability to exploit the physics of neglect. Tariq stood, pulling his expensive bish tighter around his shoulders. He was defeated, but he would not let the girl walk away with the victory so easily. He had one final, desperate, human card to play. He ordered his black helicopter to the service yard. He was going to concede, but he was going to do it in a way that would wound Zahra, leaving her with a moral scar. The wind howled through the service yard, carrying sand and dust, as the black helicopter, carrying Sheikh Tariq Al-Faisal, descended. The Al-Hada district, shielded by Zahra's atmospheric, floating network, was the only pocket of stable light in the darkening storm. Tariq emerged, his pristine white bisht flapping in the gale. He looked defeated, yet meticulously controlled. He walked directly toward Zahra, who was carefully disconnecting the lightning rod antenna and packing up her custom-made Al-Noor key. T-minus 5 minutes, the wager concludes. "The 72 hours are complete, Miss Abbas," Tariq announced, his voice carrying over the wind. "The Al-Hada district remains stable. You have won the wager. I concede all terms." He paused, letting the weight of his admission, the loss of his CEO title, and the transfer of his infrastructure division, sink in. But he wasn't done inflicting pain. "I am a man of my word," Tariq continued, pulling out a massive, black financial binder. "However, the terms of the trust stipulate that all assets must be transferred to a legally recognized entity capable of managing them." He sneered, finally deploying his last, most personal weapon. "You are 16. You have no formal education, no legal corporate identity, and no capital. You cannot run an entire infrastructure division. So, I will honor the spirit of the wager. I will transfer the assets, but they must be managed by a legally mandated guardian." He then snapped the binder open and pointed to a legal document. "I have already arranged a suitable guardian, as a token of my defeat. I have established a Hayes Abbas Foundation, and I have made the first substantial contribution." He motioned to his security team. They brought forward a large, clear display case containing the exact 10,000 rials he had initially offered Zahra to walk away in Chapter 1. "This money, Miss Abbas," Tariq stated, his voice dripping with false magnanimity, "will now be used to acquire the small, unregistered clinic in your neighborhood, the one your mother runs. It will be legalized, rebuilt, and funded by the foundation, ensuring your family's financial stability. You and the grid, I guarantee the safety of your family's future. You are a genius, Zahra, but you are still a child who needs my wealth and my structure to protect the ones you love. He was attempting to diminish her victory, framing her as a talented dependent who needed his charity to survive, proving that money and power still trump genius. He was trying to buy her moral silence one last time. Zahra looked at the money, then at the clinic acquisition papers. She knew the clinic was the single most vital piece of infrastructure in Al-Hada. Tariq knew it too. By guaranteeing its safety, he was simultaneously holding it hostage. The true formula of legacy. Zahra walked past the money. She didn't touch the 10,000 rials, which now felt like a curse. She stopped directly in front of Tariq, looking him in the eye through the haze of the sandstorm. I refused your 10,000 rials for silence, Sheikh, Zahra stated, her voice calm and absolute. I refuse it now for charity. She pointed to the clinic acquisition documents. You are correct. The Al-Hada clinic needs funding, but it does not need your foundation, and it certainly doesn't need your control. Zahra walked over to her monitored laptop, which was still broadcasting the final stability metrics of the Al-Noor system. She pulled up the financial records she had quarantined during her Echo Tunnel broadcast, Chapter 7. The records detailing Tariq's $200 million cost-cutting measure that caused the ShadowNet failure. The $10,000 you offered is an insult to the people you poisoned, Zahra said, her voice rising in pitch, turning the concession into an execution. The Abbas Foundation will be established, and it will be transparently audited, but its capital will not come from that box of hush money. She pointed to the financial directive on the screen. The foundation's seed capital will be exactly $200 million, the sum you personally stripped from the infrastructure maintenance budget 3 years ago, leading directly to this failure. That money, plus interest, will be legally repatriated from your offshore personal assets and placed in the trust to fund the ethical upgrades of all underserved communities. Zahra then looked directly into the camera that Tariq knew was still broadcasting, confirming the victory for the global financial world. Sheikh Tariq Al-Faisal is no longer the CEO. The controlling interest is now transferred to the Abbas Trust with Dr. Hisham Abbas. Zahra paused, naming her late father's oldest, most trusted colleague as the interim trustee, pending a public review board. Tariq swayed slightly, his face registering true defeat. He hadn't just lost his job. He was being forced to use the exact funds from his crime to pay for the solution. The $200 million was the true formula of legacy, the cost of his ethical failure. Epilogue 2 years later. 2 years later, the sandstorm still came, but Al-Hada never lost power. The Al-Noor system, now known as the Abbas al-Hada Protocol, had been adopted by dozens of cities worldwide, stabilizing grids through decentralization. Zahra Abbas, now 18, was officially the face of the Abbas Foundation, having graduated with her first official engineering degree while simultaneously running the company. She was celebrated as the ultimate tech disruptor. Sheikh Tariq Al-Faisal was relegated to a silent, non-voting minority shareholder in his former empire, forced to watch as the $200 million trust successfully reversed years of his infrastructural neglect. He was, to all intents and purposes, functionally erased from the power grid. Zahra stood on the stage of a new, transparent, and ethically built energy conference in Jeddah. She looked out at the audience, not with bitterness, but with calm certainty. The Sheikh was right about one thing. Zahra concluded her address. Intelligence without structure is just noise. But he was wrong about the nature of the structure. It's not built on gold, secrecy, or centralized control. The only stable structure in the universe is built on trust, transparency, and the simple, undeniable truth. She held up the small, battered Al-Noor key, its metallic casing shining under the lights. This is the formula of fire, she finished, smiling. A formula that proves that the power of a community, given the right tools, is unstoppable. Zahra's victory was a triumph of ethical, open-source engineering over corporate greed. The most powerful weapon she used was her commitment to the truth and her community. What is the one simple, decentralized solution, or technology you believe could fundamentally empower your community and challenge the status quo. E.g., community-owned local Wi-Fi mesh, a decentralized food system, etc. Share your Al-Noor idea for local change in the comments.